My last guest today, joining me, is a Hall of Fame songwriter. Miss Gretchen Peters is joining me this morning. Now, I had read a little bit about Gretchen, and I didn't believe you'd be here because you are retired.
Well, I'm retired from the road. I'm not retired. I'm retired from the long haul tours that.
Well, congratulations.
Yeah, it's good. A bedtime is a wonderful thing. A regular bedtime. Never had that in my whole adult life. It's been great.
That's great. So now you just get to do the fun stuff.
I tour with my husband, who's coming with my guitar at some point soon. And we kind of, like I said, we retired from the long 3, 4, 5, 6 week, slogs. And we've sort of moved into what we're calling tourcation mode. So if it's Whitefish, Montana, yeah, we'd love to come. If it's, Cleveland, in January, maybe not.
Now, does your husband play with you as well? He's a guitar player?
Yes, he's a piano player.
Piano player,
yeah.
Okay. And you play guitar, obviously.
I play guitar.
Where are you from originally?
New York.
New York, what part?
Westchester County, right outside of New York City.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So how did you get from being growing up outside New York City? What were you listening to that led you down this path to become a Nashville Hall of Fame songwriter?
Yeah, it's a long, circuitous route that I took. I grew up in. I was the youngest of 4 kids, and my next oldest sister was 6 years older than me, so she was right at the age when the great folk music scare of the 60s, as Steve Earle put it, happened. And it felt like for us, especially for me as a little kid, it felt like it was happening just in my backyard. I didn't realize it was happening all over the world and all over the country. But, people like Janice Ian were on my radio, and I thought it was our little scene, because when you're 5, 6 years old, that's how you think, I guess. But that music is what spoke to me first. I learned to play the guitar when I was 7. I went to a camp. My parents sent me to a camp, the only kind of camp that I wanted to go to, which was a camp that didn't have any camp activities. It just had like theater and music, and it was a performing arts camp is what it was. And I learned to play guitar there. And so my sister was also bringing home Beatles albums and Rolling Stones albums, but I couldn't, my little kind of guitar playing kid brain couldn't get my head around the fact that people actually wrote those songs because they seemed so huge and kind of elemental. But Bob Dylan records, and Woody Guthrie songs, which my dad introduced me to, those things seemed doable. Like you could make that sound okay with a voice and a guitar. So it was folk music for me for the first, almost 10 years. And then my parents divorced, and my mom and I moved to Colorado. And that was that was 1970. I was just about to turn 13. And the country rock scene was just all happening out there in Colorado. I mean, all the, a lot of the bands were living up in the mountains, up above Boulder where we lived, and I started working in a record store. It was my first job. I always feel so at home in record stores. And I just got bit by that bug because it always felt to me like it was a cousin of folk music. There were a lot of similarities. There were stories, there were character songs, kind of story songs. It was sad, it was acoustic, it was all about the story and the lyrics, and it was simple. The music was simple, and that had always appealed to me. So I kind of made this just transition through those kind of hippie country bands, people like the Dirt Band and not Rodney came later, but Graham Parsons, the Byrds, Flying Burrito Brothers. And I started just reading the backs of the album and going like, who's Merle Haggard? Because I'd grown up in New York. I didn't, I had no contact with any of this. And especially noticing the songwriters' names on some of those songs, because Graham Parsons, for instance, covered loads of classic country songs. And I had a friend who worked at a record store in Boulder on the hill by the university who had lived in Nashville, and he was like my dealer. I would go in the back room, and he would slip me like a George Jones record or something, and I just was obsessed with it. I felt like I discovered something all by myself, and started playing in bars around the time I was 17, and eventually realized I had done all of the things I could do musically in Boulder, and moved to Nashville some years later, and there I was, a carpetbagger from New York, in the middle of Tennessee.
Guitar in hand.
Yeah.
Ready to play.
Right, yeah.
Where were you playing when you first got to town? Anywhere you could?
Well, you know, it wasn't really a live, I got to town in 1987, it wasn't really a live music. Hi, baby. Thank you. I really owe you for carrying that thing.
Yes, you did.
And modeling my merch too. It's very, my best-selling T-shirt set says "Sad songs make me happy."
That's awesome.
Thank you. There wasn't there. You couldn't play. There were like two places that I remember.
Really?
There was the Bluebird, and there was a place called Douglas Corner. There were probably others, but there weren't that many venues. Not like there are now. It was a recording town, a songwriting town, not a live music town. Austin was the live music town. And I came as a singer-songwriter, and I was really perplexed by the question that I got almost every office that I was able to get my way into. The question was, do you want to be a singer or a songwriter?
Okay.
It was like, yes. And because I loved Paul Simon and Joni Mitchell, and above all Leonard Cohen, and all of even all of my country heroes like Rodney were singer-songwriters. They did all of it, and I couldn't imagine separating them. So that was perplexing at first, and I got a lot of kind of mixed messages. I mean, I would say like the first year that I was sort of knocking on doors, I got as many publishers and record people saying to me, you should probably just concentrate on songwriting, and maybe the other 50% you should probably just concentrate on finding a record deal. And it was very confusing to me.
With only so many opportunities in terms of places to shop new songwriters, people that are just getting into town, was there just not that many people doing it in 1987?
Oh, a lot
compared
less.
to how many are trying to do it now?
Well, first of all, there were about 2 women songwriters.
Okay.
I mean, I'm almost not exaggerating. There were very few women in the songwriting community, and that, thank God, has changed.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was small. It was basically 2 streets in Nashville where the entire recording industry was. So you really could, you could develop a community pretty quickly. And, if you hung out at the Bluebird or you hung out at Douglas Corner, which was the other place, you met other songwriters, and pretty quickly, you'd find your tribe.
Okay.
So it was not like, I can't imagine what it's like for young writers today.
To try and break through.
Yeah, it's very, very, very different. I feel very lucky I got there when I did.
Because I hear stories about people who just kind of had the cojones or whatever to just walk into somebody's publishing shop. Here's my tape, and somebody actually listens to it, and kind of gives them a yes or no there. And that, I don't know if that's how it's done anymore, but I have a feeling that's probably not the avenue anymore.
I was never that. I didn't ever have that much nerve. I was able to somehow, find someone to put in a word for me with someone at a publishing company, and able to either, get my foot in the door to get into their office and play them a tape, or just send one or something. But I got a publishing deal within 3 months of arriving. So I didn't realize that was actually kind of
accomplishment.
Yeah, it doesn't always go that way, but I thought, well, you get here and then that's what you do.
Did that publishing deal that you first got, did that run out and then you had to, or did you start having some success with that publishing deal?
I had some success with that publishing deal, and I was so lucky because I was not a sort of typical writer. First of all, whatever songs I brought to Nashville, none of them were good. And so my first publisher, the thing that still amazes me is, what did he hear that he thought I was going to do anything? I mean, what was it I can listen to those songs and think, yeah, ooh. But somehow he knew that I was going to write something that was worth a damn.
Did you ever get any answer on that later? Did that kind of perplex you for a while?
I don't want to know.
Because there was something.
The worst thing in the world to me is to go. I mean, I avoided this like the plague. I still would, if I had to, is to sit in a small room with somebody else and wait for them to tell me whether something I did was good or not.
Yeah.
I mean, I would rather have root canal than do that. I was not the kind of person that would just go out on Music Row and knock on doors and say, "Here, you want to listen to? I just wrote this. You want to?" You know, I was not. That was not me. I was very reticent that way. But he was really great in that respect, in the sense that he obviously could hear that I was going to write something good. And the other thing was, I was just an atypical writer in that I tried very hard to co-write, which is what everybody did in Nashville, and I just am not built that way. I'm not made that way. And my publisher, God bless him, saw me struggling with it during I think the first year that I was signed there, and he said, "Stop. First of all, I like what you're writing by yourself better. Second of all, I love 100% of a copyright." And he kind of let me off the hook and let me just be me. And it was, now I should say that this publishing company had, Steve Earle on the roster, Gail Davies, Ron Davies, a lot of great writers that are very idiosyncratic.
Sure.
Like he was the kind of publisher that was sort of drawn to that. So I was lucky in that he found me and I found him. And I could have ended up in a situation where I was pressured to co-write, pressured to write ditties and what was on the radio, and I didn't, thank goodness. And I really have been lucky my whole career. I've been with 3 publishers over the past 35 years, and all of them have just kind of let me have my reins, as they say.
It seems to have worked out very well. Luckily.
Well, it worked out for me. So.
It did. So you still, like, throughout your career, you would primarily come up with most of your ideas primarily alone. Like you would.
I have at this point I have 2 co-writing relationships. Okay. That one of them is somebody I've been writing with for 30 years, and that's Bryan Adams. It's a weird anomaly thing that just happened. He's a very persistent guy, and he just called me and wouldn't let it go. And I just thought, Bryan Adams? What do we have in common? But as it turned out, we grew up, we had a lot in common in our personal lives. We both were children of divorce. About the same time, our mothers moved west with us. We turned to music because we hated everything. We were 14, and that allowed us to have 2-3 good solid years in our room with a guitar, which is our what is it, 10,000 hour thing. Yeah. I did my 10,000 hours between age 14 and 16, and we had a lot of music in common. So it took some, we had to write together for a while before I could figure out how to do it. And I will say that the quality of writing with him, it's just a different activity. It's just utterly different from what I do on my own. In some ways, when I write with him, I'm writing from the outside in, and I think when I'm writing by myself, I'm writing from the inside out, which is fine, because honestly, chops and songwriting craft, I think, sometimes doesn't get enough respect, and it's equally important to the art and the inspiration that comes from somewhere in here. they're both important. And I think a lot of my experience writing with him has sharpened my wits in terms of, the craft of things. And my other co-writing relationship that just worked was with a friend of mine from Northern Ireland by the name of Ben Glover. And he's an Irishman, and he's very, as all the Irish are, he's very poetic and dark. And the very first song that we wrote, I brought a chorus in to the writing session, and it was a murder incest ballad, and he didn't flinch. He didn't even blink, and I thought, this guy's for me. I think But Ben has this way of, we've written some dark, very dark songs and other kinds too, but he has this way of kind of being in the room and not being in the room at the same time, and I really have found that I require that because I kind of need, I can't sit there with someone across from me expecting something. It's just, that freezes me.
Yeah.
But Ben has a way of, like I said, just kind of being there but not. And that's it, and I've just learned. So many lovely and brilliant people have asked me to write with him, and I just say, you're going to hate it, and you won't like me either after we're done. I'm very slow. Sometimes I take 6 months, a year. I have to let everything gestate for a long time. I'm very nonverbal at the beginning, so if you're in the room with me, you'll just be sitting there and I'll be not saying anything, and it's just, you're not going to enjoy it. Please don't ask.
So if I could just go back a little bit, where you got to town, somebody saw something in you that I think you saw in yourself, because otherwise you wouldn't be in town if you didn't see something in
Yeah, I
yourself.
think I spent, when I first got to Nashville, I spent half of the time thinking, oh God, I should just go home. And the other half of the time thinking, I could do this too. And there was that other half that kept me going. Yeah, I remember many moments, like the first Harlan Howard birthday bash, which was a big deal back then, every summer, hearing Katie Osland was a brand new artist, and hearing her come out, and I thought, oh shit, I'll go home. I should go back to Colorado. That's just unreachable. But then I would hear somebody else that was doing okay, and I'd think, I'm that good, So there was that little part of me that just kind of kept me going, I guess. Yeah.
Did you have some mentors? Because you obviously developed into a songwriter that you weren't before, but then you did develop. Who were some of those mentors that kind of helped you along?
My first publisher, who I mentioned, his name was Noel Fox. He was a big mentor. There were a couple early on. There were a couple record people. Barry Beckett was one of them. That he didn't sign me. We kind of circled around each other a little bit, but he would always, when he would see me, he would always want to know what I was doing, hear my latest songs. He cuts. One of the cuts I'm the most proud of was Etta James, and he was responsible for that. He produced that record. So he was an encourager. And then, my songwriter friends too. And just people like Amy Kurland at the Bluebird, who, when I first got to town, I was terrified of her because she was like there were no reality songwriting singer shows back then, but she was like the judge, if you went to play at the Bluebird and you sucked, she was gonna not let you come back, So, people like that. I missed out on, because I wasn't a co-writer really, I missed out early on some of the community. That was the thing that I regret, that I missed out on that. I was alone in my room writing a lot. I don't regret that I was doing that, but my really strong, deep friendships with other writers didn't kind of develop until much later, because during those early years I was just trying to write as many songs as I could, and I was alone doing that. So.
Yeah. Do you think we could get you to dig that guitar out and play us a song?
You probably could, yeah.
I think we'd all appreciate it.
It's early, so it's gonna have to be a low one.
It is early. It's almost noon though, so we still have beer?
And tequila.
And tequila? Set them up.
That won't help me, I'm afraid.
Yeah, you never know. Well, I appreciate y'all coming out today. You guys having fun with this interview process? Thank you. I get a lot out of this personally, as a songwriter, getting to talk to these legends. And so I really appreciate you guys being here and cheering both of us on, but mostly me, because I need the encouragement.
Great job.
Thank you very much. I very much enjoy this. And that's just a little tuner pedal on and off, and
You want me to do it in tune?
No.
Asking that.
No. Heavens no. And they don't just let anybody into the Nashville Songwriter Hall of Fame. So,
Who were some of the people she wrote for?
Faith Hill is a big one. Etta James.
Martina McBride, George Strait, of course Brian Adams, Trisha Yearwood. A lot of the girls of the 90s.
Wow, awesome.
We're so happy that 90s music is kind of having a moment.
Yes, for sure.
Because I gotta tell you, we didn't realize what a golden era for country music that we were right in the middle of until it was over. I mean, it was that time when you could write a song that was kind of quirky and maybe a little longer than it should be, and it was slow, and it was sad, and our great artists would record it if it was great. Not if it was good, but if it was great, you know. So, how many of you guys were at our first show Thursday? Damn, I was gonna do that song again. Yeah?
We can do it.
I got permission
I don't
from
think
that
anybody
guy.
would mind.
I guess, I'm a storyteller, basically. I like songs with characters. I love movies. I love novels. I like fiction. So I think it's sort of natural that I tend to write narratives in song. I think that the thing that I least like to do is write love songs, because I just feel like, oh God, we've just heard so many of those, and there's so many things to write about, and I tend to write. I tend to grab onto an image or a title or an idea or something, and oftentimes a character kind of insinuates their way inside of me and starts talking to me, and this is often the beginning of a song for me, is just sort of sitting and interrogating that character. Like, I was talking to David, who was at one of my classes at Rodney's songwriting workshop. I always ask myself in the process of writing one of those kinds of songs, I ask the character, where are you, what are you doing, and what's eating at you? And if you can answer those three questions, then you've got the scenery, the character development, and the narrative arc right there. So this is an example of one of those songs that sort of evolved that way. I've got 5 minutes to sneak a cigarette, 5 minutes to myself, back behind the screen door of Andy's luncheonette, and I ain't got time to worry about my health. My boss Andy says I'll smoke myself to death. Andy, he reminds me some of you. Back when you were Romeo and I was Juliet, West Texas, Capulet, and Montague. much more than kids. It was nearly 20 years ago I shut and locked that door. Now I've got 5 minutes, not much time to reminisce. Most nights I come home from work and I pour a glass of wine. Sometimes it's 3 or 4 before I stop. Jessie makes a sandwich if I sleep through supper time. And she leaves me on the couch to sleep it off. Now Jessie just turned 17, and she's wild as she can be. And there ain't nothing I can do. Last weekend she ran off to meet a boy in Tennessee, just like I used to run to you. And I gave her hell when she came home this afternoon. Mascara running down her face. It seems like history repeats itself, and it ain't up to you. And in 5 minutes, your whole life can change. Andy, he's good to me, and I can see it in his eyes. He'd love to take your place. Something deep inside me just withers up and dies to make love to him and only see your face. Somehow I've let myself go gently down the street. A fine example I have set between the working and the living and the ghosts that haunt my dreams. I've got 5 minutes, and I'm gonna smoke this cigarette. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you very much for sharing that with us. If I could just have another minute of your time, or
Yeah. I love doing this.
well, thanks for
I'd
joining
much
me. I
rather
appreciate
talk about
that.
writing than actually write.
Okay, good. Me too. I'd rather pick your brain about it. But just for the writers in the room, people that are coming up, aspiring creatives out there, what kind of advice could you impart on them today?
Your instincts as a writer are the only thing that you will ever have. There will be an accumulation of skill, craft. All of that is important, but the real kind of bedrock of your ability as a writer is your instinct. And it's really hard when you're starting out to listen to that. It's really hard not to give other people's opinions more weight than what's actually coming from here. That's not to say that you shouldn't listen to criticism and, take it in and consider it, but if you can develop that